Hello. Let's try this again. Trying the new technical stuff that I've never done before. So, I've never recorded on my laptop like this before. So, bear with me. I'm Nova. This is Authentically You, my podcast that I'm starting or that I've started, where I want to share my own experiences with spirituality, with energy, and the guidance that I've been given by spirit to share with everyone. I've I keep getting, just stop overthinking it and do it. Just stop overthinking and do it. And so I finally have done it. I've recorded my first episode, but now I'm being told to show my face while I record an episode. So here I am. I was told to share my story, my journey. I know I've touched on it a bit on TikTok, and it's been the generalized version because there's so many layers to everything. And so I'm feeling guided to share whatever comes out about my journey now. So I'm not going to limit myself to time. I'm not going to worry about time. I'm just going to flow with the energy and say what needs to be said. So I hope this reaches the right people. I intend that this reaches the right people, that you're able to take something from this story. And bear with me. I'm already feeling the energy flowing through me, and it gives me shivers. So if you hear me kind of chattering a little bit, that's that energy that's starting to flow through me, because that happens sometimes when I speak truth and when I'm letting spirit speak through me. Anyway, I was born and raised here in Chicago, Libra, daughter of immigrants who came from Mexico back in the 80s, in the 80s and stuff like that. And my parents met here after they came to the United States. And my sister was born, and then I was born, and then my brother was born. We grew up in on the south side of Chicago in a neighborhood called Little Village. And from there, I don't remember a lot from there because we moved from that area to a house because my parents had rented apartments and stuff like that. But then they bought a house, and I was like in second grade when that happened. And sorry, I forget there's a camera recording. So if my eyes go away, it's because I forget that we're recording. I'm just talking. But so when we moved to the house, I was in second grade. And Spanish was my first language. My mom taught me, my parents taught us to read, and so their main language was Spanish. I remember even school being in Spanish for the most part, but I remember when we moved to the house, like I struggled a bit with English, but then like it was fine. Like I was young, so I adapted quickly. But yeah, you know, I went through some childhood trauma, um, I was sexually molested as a kid by a family member, and that led to a lot of things as a kid, being like a hypersexual kid, almost like, being into porn at a young age, and just things that like a kid wouldn't be into unless they were exposed to it at a young age, right? Because for a long time, to me, it felt like a dream because I was so young. I was maybe like 4 or 5. That to me, it always felt like a dream. And for a long time, I had like convinced myself that it was a dream. So for a long time, I just thought there was something wrong with me for being into pornography at such a young age. But now I look back, it's like, no, that was my reaction to the abuse that I was experiencing, that I had experienced, because it ended eventually. But obviously that energy stayed with me. And so, yeah, so that led to that. And then, at one point, my parents found God and we got into Salvation Army Church. And I was like maybe 5, 6 years old. I was involved, and they used to have like timbrels and stuff like that, and I was involved in that. And I was very active. I became active in the church through my parents because my parents would go to church and stuff like that. And that's where a lot of the religious side and stuff like that. And I believed in God, but I also I feared a lot of things, right? Because they make you fear that like you're gonna go to hell if you sin, if you don't do what they tell you you're supposed to do, right? So that means like having to hide parts of yourself, that things like me like feeling guilty for listening to music. I was really into heavy metal. Like Korn was like one of my favorite bands as a young kid, and feeling guilty for listening to that because like I was gonna go to hell for listening to those things, like things like that. That I don't know, some like it's like I believe, like I felt the presence, I felt the spiritual presence of God. I had those moments where I knew there was something bigger than me, but then there were the other moments that didn't quite resonate with me. Like, okay, if God loves me unconditionally, then why would he send me to hell for doing something wrong, for being human? You know what I mean? Like, and so, or for not or for not believe, like, it just it didn't compute to me. I, and then feeling like obligated to go to church. Like my parents were always very like, every Sunday go to church. Every Sunday with Salvation Army, we had to wear or it was uniforms. Like if you're a member of the church, you wear uniforms that kind of resemble the army. And which I know some people might think that it looks like a cult. I don't feel like it's a cult, but it can feel like one if you, from the outside, you look at everyone dressed in uniforms. Like it does seem kind of cultish, but just having my parents obligating us to wear the uniform and to go to church and things like that, where it felt more like an obligation than something that I actually wanted to do. And a lot of my a lot of issues would come up at church, like people judging or a lot of drama, things like that, where you're just like, I kind of don't want to be at church because church has more drama sometimes than not going to church. I have family that are pastors from Salvation Army as well. So, like we've all just been involved and stuff. And so, I grew up like knowing about the Bible, knowing about Jesus, knowing about things like that. But like I said, always like there are certain things that I didn't quite resonate with, and I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know. I just accepted it. At the time, I accepted it blindly because it's like, well, if I don't, I'm a bad Christian, right? But I wanted to believe I was a good Christian. And so anyway, growing up in school, I was very shy. I think that was part of the trauma I experienced, maybe because, my mom says I used to talk a lot and they wouldn't be able to get me to shut up sometimes. And then I remember just being so shy that, like, being afraid of the teacher calling my name, or, just feeling that anxiety in the pit of my stomach. Like, I didn't want to be noticed. Part of it too was growing up overweight, right? Even as a kid, I was always a little chunky, and nothing wrong with that. I don't mean chunky in like an offensive way at all. Like I was a chunky girl, and I loved my now I love myself more, but at the time, like I always felt like there was something wrong with me. Like I would get teased. I would have cousins who would say really mean things about me being fat or things like that, where like would make me feel like I'm not good enough or I don't look good enough to be loved, to be liked. And so that created, I feel like that created like a shell around me. I created this like energetic armor so that like I didn't want to be noticed. I didn't want to cause any attention to myself, because if people paid attention to me, then they would notice that I'm fat, and then they would say something about me being fat, and I didn't want to have to listen to me being fat. Like I already hear that all the time. Like I don't want to give people more reason to tell me I'm fat again. Like it was like that kind of thing. And so I was very shy and quiet, and I didn't want to be noticed because of that, because I didn't want people to point out my things that were wrong with me, or things that, I didn't have that others did, that made them popular, and me not, and not that I wanted to be popular. I was never that kind of person. I was always like my own. Like I was never much of a follower. Like I did do some things that to follow along, and then afterwards I felt guilty. Like me and my friend one time, we like teased a girl for having like a hole in her pants, and I still feel so bad now to this day. Like if she's ever watching this, I think her name was Kristen. Kristen, if you ever see this, I've always felt terrible about that. I just went along with what Jessica was saying. Like I never agreed. Like, like I felt bad. I felt terrible. And so even back then, like being mean, like I could feel it in my body. I didn't like it, but I just, when you're a kid, you want to fit in, and, you don't do it to be, you don't do it because you're necessarily a bad person. You do it because you feel like that could make you fit in with everyone else when you already feel like an outsider for other things. And so that's what was happening with that. So I'm sorry, Kristen, if you ever see this. But other than that, I think that's like the meanest thing I've ever really done, that I can remember. Like, I don't know. I've never felt the need to be like mean to people like that. Like, I mean, obviously, I was probably a little catty or something. I mean, what girl isn't? Like especially when we want to have friends and we're put under pressure, to like be popular and get the boy and all this stuff, like I don't know, but I just never cared, and I just wanted to get through. I think I just wanted to get through my teenage years. Like I did make a few friends, none really like nothing like really deep or close, all superficial. The friendships that I made like in high school were always superficial and stuff like that. Because we like never kept in touch even after high school. I mean, like maybe with one friend, I would meet with her every now and then, but we eventually lost touch as well, and that's life. That happens. But um, I, I, growing up, like I always wanted to be a teacher. Like I used to play school with my cousins that my mom would babysit, and I used to be the teacher. Or my teacher in fourth grade would let me write stuff on the board or grade papers, and I would love it. And so I always said I wanted to be a teacher. And to this day, my mom says I traumatized her because I didn't end up being a teacher. I ended up taking a year off after high school, and I was working for Salvation Army, the church that I grew up going to. They needed a like seasonal social worker for the Christmas season, because when people need like assistance for like their gas bill and stuff like that. I started working there, and I fell in love with social work. Like I was just like, that's what I want to do. So I ended up studying social work. And well, I went to a Christian university, so it was like Christian ministries with emphasis in counseling, social work. And they had like a biblical studies minor or something too. But That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to work for Salvation Army because I really enjoyed doing what I did at the time. So that's what I did. I worked for Salvation Army for like 12, 13 years. Yeah, it was good. It was a good experience. I learned a lot. I grew a lot in my career, and eventually I did different things. So I worked in different things and different, because not all Salvation Armies are the same. So they're like, they have their own like different management and stuff like that, different departments, different things. So I I did different things. I started as an administrative assistant not long after college, and my first job was actually just blocks away from where I lived. So I got to just walk. It was like a 5 minute walk there and back, and I got to go home for lunch. It was awesome. And that I eventually got promoted to like another position because at the time, like we were doing a program that was helping like low income people get a car loan like at a decent interest rate. It was like 8% or something like that. Like something like that, otherwise they couldn't get anywhere else, but like they had to pay us back. And so I started, like, I was helping with that program. We were teaching financial education because that was part of the requirement for the program, is like you had to take a financial education class. And then we also tell you more about the program and the steps that you need to take. We do a credit check. Like we did a credit check, and we would go over their credit report and help them try to get some of those things taken care of. So like getting them either removed from their credit report if they can get them removed, like how you could just write a letter or whatever, or if they can like pay something off, something to like to show that they're improving, trying to improve their credit a little bit, nothing like too crazy, but just to show that like the person is taking an initiative on trying to better their credit, because this was the kind of like a second chance type of loan, right? It was like as they're paying off their loan, we were gonna follow up with them if in case they needed financial assistance or something. We would refer them to one of our resources or stuff like that. But then we lost funding for that program, and like the program stopped, and like I forgot what happened to it. That's when I ended up moving to Kansas City, and I transferred and I became a case manager with their Pathway of Hope program, where we worked with low income families to become more self sufficient. Like the goal was to help them like temporarily, like help them with like some financial assistance temporarily, but as like it's like the goal was to get them to like become self sufficient. So, whatever was keeping them from becoming self sufficient, we would help them like work toward the goals toward that so that they could become self sufficient. So, we would provide them with like resources and stuff too. But that program didn't really like, I don't know if it's still like happening, because I don't know, I feel like a lot of clients just got, they just became part of the program to get the financial assistance. And then afterwards, it was like hard to even get a hold of them to get them to work on goals and stuff like that. And then eventually they were starting to get on the funding on like, hey, don't just spend money on them. But it's like spending money on them is how we kind of get them hooked. Not hooked, but you know what I mean? Get them into the program, right? Because, like, hey, do you need financial assistance? I have this program, right? And so that's kind of how you get them into the program. But then you help them financially, and then they're like, bye, like, I got help, right? Unless they need financial assistance again, that's when they'd come back usually. So, usually, if they need help with rent or like utility bills or something like that, they'd come back. So, I don't know, it didn't motivate clients to keep coming back to actually work on becoming self-sufficient. So I lived in Kansas City for 5 years. So I did the case management with Salvation Army for a few years. And then the last year I was there, I actually I ended up quitting because I was like, it became boring because it was a lot of the cycles of that, of like clients only wanting to come in when they needed financial assistance, but then they like leave, and then so then I was just sitting there like twiddling my thumbs, and it was boring. And I was just like, okay, I wanted something else, something more. So I ended up getting a job with the housing authority of Kansas City. But I was only there for like a few months. Like I started in January, and by like April I was giving my notice because that's when my husband and I had decided to move back to Chicago. We wanted to come back. We wanted to start a family, and we wanted to be close to our family, and our family was in Chicago. So we went back. We had made a plan that we were going to stay at my parents for just a year, just until we got back on our feet and we could find a place, like we could save up while we live with them, save up for a down payment or something, and then buy a house or something like that. That was May 2019. And then COVID happened in 2020. So and then he died of COVID. That just was not in the cards for us. But I mean, I feel like the universe shifted things around because, they knew that his time was coming, and so they wanted us to be back home with our family for that, because he died December 2020, and we had just moved back May 2020. No, May 2019 is when we moved back. And he started a job, and literally like at the end of the week of his first week at this new job, when we moved back to Chicago, he got into a car accident where he broke his right foot that he needs to drive. He had to have surgery. The surgery didn't take because he was diabetic, and he needed an external fixator. And so he ended up being unemployed for over a year. And that really, it made him really depressed. And it made me, as his wife too, like, it made me feel so helpless. Like, I didn't know how else to help him. I did what I could. I took him to his appointments. I was on intermittent leave for my job to take him to his appointments because he couldn't drive. His car was totaled as well. And I had to like clean all his, like, the wounds, all the needle areas of the external fixator. And when he started physical therapy, I was taking him to physical therapy, things like that. Like, it was probably like the hardest year of our marriage. And then he went back to work October 2020, and he was so happy to be back to work. Like, that man lived to work. Like, he was that kind of man, right? That like just lives to be a provider and to work. And that's why he got so depressed, because he couldn't provide. He was stuck at home, and he was so happy. And then the elections happened, and that week we both got COVID. And he had started coughing, and he's like, it's just bronchitis. He's like, I was like, okay. He got easily sick. He was diabetic. So he would get sick all the time. And it's, I want to say it's kind of funny. It's not funny, but it's like funny in like universe kind of way funny. There was a time earlier that year when the pandemic had first started where I like, I went to get tested or something. No, yeah, I went to get tested or something, and my I tested negative, but I had like my temperature was a little high, and so I couldn't go back to work. Like, I had to quarantine for a bit before I could go back to work. So like Ricky had always said, his name was Ricky, my husband. Ricky had always said that if he were to get COVID, he wouldn't make it. He's like, I feel like if I get that, I won't make it. He would always say that. or he said it at least once, I should say. He didn't always say that. He said it at least once, but when I had tested negative, but I had that temperature, like my temperature was a little higher, I quarantined, but he didn't want to leave my side. He didn't want to be separated from me. So I was like, I jokingly said, you're gonna die with me or whatever. He's like, yeah, well, but I wasn't sick or anything, thankfully. This was like, yeah, earlier in the pandemic, like not like May 2020 or something. So anyway, now we're back to October or November 2020, and he has bronchitis, or he thinks he has bronchitis. I feel fine. And so I said, well, go get tested either way. And he's like, okay. And I remember I was on my way to work. I worked at an emergency shelter at the time. And he calls me and he's like, I tested positive. And I was like, turned around, made a U-turn and called work and told them that, my husband had tested positive and I had to go back because most likely I had it too. And I did. And there was a moment where we were both in the living room and he was coughing, I was coughing. I got up to do something and I passed out. Like I got really dizzy and passed out and twisted my ankle. And I came to and Ricky's coughing, but he's trying to get up to help me. And I said, no, stay. And I'm coughing and I'm like, no, you stay over there. I'm okay. Like, because he was trying to help me up, but he was coughing a lot. We were checking his pulse ox. He had a pulse ox monitor, and it was getting lower than that. His doctor had said like monitor it, and if it gets below a certain number, like you should call an ambulance or whatever. So anyway, but that was like a moment that I just always think about because it was funny. It was just funny. We were both like dying, and he was still trying to help me when I passed out. So anyway, and then one night he was just coughing and coughing all night, and I checked his pulse ox, and it was down to like 80 something. I'm like, we need to go. I said, you need to go to the hospital. And so he didn't want to, but I didn't leave room for, and so it took him forever to get ready because he was just so coughing for every little thing and it would weaken him. It hurt to just even hear him cough at that point because, it was a lot. And, it took him, he had to go up the stairs too because we had to go upstairs to go through the main door because we lived in the basement of my parents' house. And he was kind of annoyed because I was like, "Are you almost ready?" Like, because he was doing his best. And I said, "I love you," and he went, and he was there for like maybe about a week before he said that they were gonna intubate him. And then they intubated him, and they would update me every day on how he was doing. And I still had hope. I was like, oh, so when he gets better, like, and the doctor kept going, like, okay, like, even if he does make it out of this, like, he's gonna have a lot of health problems. Like, he's on dialysis. Like, they had him on dialysis. And I remember my mom even was starting to, like, I think prepare me, like I remember like she had called me during her lunch break at work. She used to work like evenings, and she like brought it up like, you gotta prepare yourself. And I remember like I reacted so viscerally. I was like, no. And I like started crying and hyperventilating, and I didn't want to accept it. And, and then they called me and said, like, you need to come and sign some paperwork. Because they didn't think he was going to make it. And so I signed like to keep him in comfort care until his heart stopped. And I remember, I will always remember how I cried because I've never cried like that in my life. And I remember like I couldn't see him in person. I could only see him through a window. And I remember like screaming like, Ricky, please don't leave me. Like, don't do this to me. I can't do this without you. Like, I was just so like I was screaming like, whew. And yeah, I signed the paperwork and I talked to his parents and they were all like, whatever you decide, like we're behind, they were, they were like, whatever you decide and stuff like that. They were very supportive and stuff like that. And he passed away like I think the next day. But it was actually his loss though that it made me like angry at God, because I was like, my husband was he was like, I mean, he had his flaws, obviously. He wasn't the perfect man, but he was a good man to me. Like, he loved me. And like, why would God take someone that loves me like that from me? Like, why would they do that? I couldn't understand. And I remember going to like grief groups, and it was the grief group that I first went to. It was like Christian themed. And at the time I was like, okay, I'll give it a chance. Let's see. And there was like one time like where they were like, God doesn't owe you an explanation or something. And I'm just like, okay, I understand that, yeah, God doesn't owe me an explanation, but hearing that right after my husband died, like, it kind of pissed me off. And I was like, what? Like, that's not something you want to tell a widow? So I stopped going to that one because I was like, I didn't like that. And then I ended up finding another one that was not religious based at all. And I liked that one a lot better. And I ended up meeting another widow that had just experienced, like, but at this point, I was already like over a year after Ricky's death. So this lady had just lost her husband like months ago. So I got to see my past self in her and how I used to be, and I got to help her with how I was healing in my journey. So that was good. I did enjoy that one. That was a good one, and I did get a lot out of it. So, but not long after my husband died, I received life insurance funds. And the crazy part is he started his job in October. His benefits went into effect December 1st, and he passed away December 5th. And so, like, if he would have died before December 1st, I would not have gotten any life insurance funds or anything, which is like, I mean, I would have managed either way, or you know what I mean? Like, it's not, and it's not like, but I'm just saying the way that the universe works. And even my husband, I feel like my husband held on just enough to make sure that I was taken care of, because that's something that mattered to him. Something we would always talk about whenever we'd start a new employment or something. It's like, oh, like, what life insurance are you going to get? And, he's like, I want to make sure you're taken care of. And I want to make sure, this is something that I know he would have wanted. And I feel like that's what happened. It's like he knew he was leaving and he wanted to make sure I was taken care of. And then I honestly feel like he left this earth and then said, I need to tell her how all of this works because it was his death that kicked off my own spiritual journey. So, you know, I feel like I did have a relationship with God before. It became very inactive, especially as like when like as I left the church and got married and stuff like that. But I still always believed there was a higher power. And then my husband died, and I said, I don't believe in a God that would do this. I don't know. It's my own hurt mind. I was in a lot of pain. It was my pain talking. Because now it doesn't really make sense, right? Like, why would, yeah, I know. But I couldn't look past the pain. I was only, now at a higher vantage point, but back then I was at the lower vantage point and I could only see the pain. So now I'm at the higher vantage point where I could see where the pain was and what was holding me down. So yeah, so I did that. I said I don't believe in God. So I started, I was still going to therapy. Like I was doing therapy every week, even before my husband died. This therapy I started like as soon as I moved back to Chicago. And then I was seeing her more frequently, like multiple times a week right after my husband died. And then, eventually we reeled it back to weekly and stuff. And she was spiritual. She was like, and so she she suggested about she had suggested meditation. And before I didn't, I don't know, it was something I was just like, that seems uninteresting to me. And then there was that kind of fear you're told sometimes that, oh, like if you meditate, like you might get bad energies, which that's if you don't have the energy protections, right? Like, but at the time I didn't know that, right? So a part of me was afraid too, afraid of what I would find if I meditated and just listened. So there was a bit of fear there too. But I started with the guided meditations from YouTube and stuff because I feel like, okay, well, at least with that, it's not completely quiet in my mind. Like I'll have the video playing in my ears. So I started with that. There's one YouTube channel that has like short ones, and so I would start with like, okay, well, I started with like once a day, and then eventually I was like, well, let me do one in the mornings, one in the evening, or like, or if I ever needed, I felt like I needed to center myself, let me do a meditation, like that, or like do breathing exercises too, especially after I left Salvation Army. Well, it was when I was still at the shelter. Well, I left the emergency shelter after my husband died because I was like, I don't want to come back to a place where people know what I was, who I was when my husband, with my husband. I don't know. It was just something I just didn't want. So I left and I ended up working at another shelter, still with Salvation Army. But something was delayed or something, but I still quit the other job and I had my life insurance money either way, and I ended up buying my condo. So I moved into my condo because in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm trying to move on. My husband would want me to be happy, right? So I was trying to move on. So I bought a condo and like remodeled my home. Like, not my home, my bathroom. The bathroom needed to be done. So I got that done as well. And I liked it. It wasn't a perfect apartment or anything. Obviously, it was worn, but I liked that it was worn. I didn't want it to be perfect. And my parents wanted me to invest in like a building where I could invest in, and I was like, I don't want to be a landlord or anything. Like, I'm not interested in that. So I ended up getting this place, and it was like, kind of a distance from where my parents live, but it was on the north side of Chicago, and sorry, there's like a gnat or something. It was on the north side of Chicago, and I wanted to change, and the job that I was gonna get was on the north side, so I would be closer. And so I was like, why not? And I'm glad I did, even though it turned out to be a bad investment in that I didn't really make a lot of money out of it. I did make some money out of it, but not as much as you would want after living there for how many years I lived. I lived there for 4 years. So I moved in 2021, and um, but I still don't have any regrets from that. But yeah, so I started with meditation with the ones on YouTube. I the job that I had at the shelter, it gave me a lot of free time because no one would come to their appointments and there was not much else to do. So I would just sit at my desk and do my meditations there. And I think that helped me a lot because, like, I was supposed to be working, but instead I did that. And that way, when I went home, I still got to do what I wanted to do at home. It was kind of like I didn't have to give up any of my time, my personal time. I gave my work time because work, I didn't have anything else to do, but my own time, I guess maybe that's how my brain was trying to logic it or whatever the word is. Um, and so yeah, I was doing that. I started with one, oh, it was, I'll highly recommend Reiki Rachel. She has this energy protection video, Reiki video. It's like it's a video, but it's audio. It's where you set up your energy protection. Like I would set it up. I would listen to that. I would have a set of videos that I would listen to every morning. That with some affirmations or whatever, but I always made sure I had that video playing to set up my energy protection every day as I got ready for work or whatever. And that's how I started with my energy protection ritual without even really knowing or being really aware of it. But I just, I understood that I had to protect my energy. So, I started doing that, and I started journaling a lot of like affirmations. I still have the journals where I was like doing affirmations, and I did some free writing too. So it's that free writing is where you could either grab a pen or you could do it typing too and just type or just write without even thinking. Just whatever comes out, let it come out and see what comes out of it. And you don't have to really make any real meaning of it right now. Just keep it for later, and later it will make sense. You could piece it together like a puzzle or something. That's always, and you get to practice. You get to practice your own gifts, because I feel like that's how I started, by doing that. Just doing that and just connecting with my body because I was doing some breathing exercises as well to connect with my body, and just listening more to that inner voice within me that is like, it sounds like me, but it sounds like a fancier version of me. That's like the best way, like a wiser version of me. Which, I mean, I'm more that version now. I feel like I'm a lot wiser now than I was back then. But that's kind of how my inner voice sounds. It's like a background voice that's always there, always present. And she's always like, when I go, oh, I want to do this or whatever. And then she kind of almost reels it back. Like, wait, are you sure about that? Or, like, but not in an ego type of way. Not the ego voice that tells you, no, like, remember what happened last time? You don't want to do that. No, not that voice. This one's more calm, more like, relax. You got this. You have nothing to prove. You are who you know you are. Like, it's more like that kind of voice in the background. So I'd recommend start meditating and start trying to, if you don't know what I'm talking about, if you don't have a voice, like, that's a good way to maybe try to find the voice or find that inner voice within you. so that you could start experimenting with it, because that's how you start the trust. That's how you start trusting it, is you start communicating with it. You start communicating with that energy, with your inner being. That's your inner divine being, your soul, whatever you want to call it, whatever you feel resonates with you. And you just start telling it, okay, like start building that trust, that connection. So if you need a bit of validation at first, that's totally fine. And the energy would love to play with you in that aspect, right? If you say, okay, if this is what I should do, send me this number or this sign or whatever you want to do. But and it will, the universe always responds and does. But at the same time, you will get to a point where you'll be told you need to do this without validation. Like, not to force you, but to solidify that trust within you. So, like, for me, it was leaving my job. Like, I didn't have really much savings in my savings. I didn't know how I was going to get money, how I was going to survive. But at that point, my trust was a lot more secure at that point than it would have been maybe even a year before that. So at that point, I felt more trust in the universe because I had built that trust. I had built that relationship within myself where, okay, yeah, if this is real, okay, then I do trust it. And so the universe is going to say, oh, yeah, you trust it? Bet here's more things that are going to test that to make sure that you do trust it. And so eventually it's going to come to a point where you're going to be required to trust without needing the validation, without needing the universe to send you signs. You are the sign. You are the sign. So you're the one that creates the signs around you. It's you, it's your signal. So you have to have that much trust in yourself that I don't need the angel numbers. The angel numbers respond to me. That's how it is. Reality responds to you and the signal that you carry. So, if you're always gonna need the validation, like it's like you have to eventually not need the validation, or else you're always gonna be chasing the validation and you'll be stuck in that loop. So you have to get to the point where you trust without needing the validation, trusting that you're on the right path, because, you know, that's how things get created. That's how miracles happen. That's how, you're being asked to create something that's never been done before, and isn't that how a lot of great minds and stuff happen? A lot of times they're told they're crazy. They're told they're gonna fail. But they keep pushing forward no matter what anyone tells them. Even if they get rejected, they keep going. And then look at them now. They're in history books. They've changed the world in some way. So that's what following your purpose is no matter what the world tells you, you're choosing yourself. You're choosing yourself no matter what. So it's like, if people are telling you, how are you going to survive without a job? The universe has me. The universe has me because I'm following my true path. I'm following my intuition. I trust myself. I trust that I'm taken care of. Be prepared that it might not be exactly how you expect it. So also lose expectations, because I went without paying my bills for 3 months, and thankfully I didn't get anything shut off. But it was a real test in not having my bills paid and letting go of that resistance, of wanting to control everything. Eventually, I said, you know what? Let my bills go unpaid. I trust that I'll be taken care of either way. Like my needs are provided for. And they were. It wasn't financial like how I expected, right? I didn't have the money to pay for the bills. I did have money for food because I had money, but I had to prioritize things, right? So I had to prioritize my needs over. And at the time, okay, the bills were not really a priority because I wasn't shut off yet. I hadn't even gotten a shut off notice, like, and it was summer as well. So I'm like, they don't shut your electricity in the summer because you need the AC. So I'm like, okay, I'm good until at least the fall. But they nothing ever happened. We never went hungry. I always had what I needed. And okay, for a moment, it doesn't look exactly how you want it exactly to look, right? But it's almost like you have to almost prove that you trust that much, like no matter what circumstances I was put in, yes, it stretched me. Yes, I cried. Knowing my dog's food was running low, that was one of my biggest resistances because I said, I don't mess with my animals. Like, I could go hungry all I want. I will not let my pets go hungry. Spirit really stretched me with that one because I had to embody that I was not worried that, oh, okay, I'm giving them their last thing of food right now. So it's like trying not to worry about that, continuing to trust, continues like I am provided for. And the universe would provide, but it took a few tries for me to really, like, really. Sometimes I would break and also that was too. It's like I would break and ask people sometimes, and that was part of the test for me too. Is like, do you trust that it comes to you, or am I gonna keep asking because I'm afraid of completely letting go and trusting that I'll be provided for? So eventually I told my family, I said, I'm not going to ask you guys for money. If you guys want to give me money because you want to, I will not say no because they knew my situation at this point. They knew I wasn't working. They knew I didn't have money. So, but I also said, I'm not going to ask you guys for money. I don't expect you guys to save me every time I need money or I need to pay for something because this is something that I chose. This is something that I decided for myself. So, if I truly say I trust the universe, like I need to trust that they'll take care of me without me having to ask you guys for help. And so, my parents accepted that, my family accepted that, and they would send money in the most aligned times sometimes, like literally one time when I was like, I'd finished crying to the universe saying, even when I'm still frustrated that I don't have money and I don't know where food is going to come for my pets, I still trust that I'll be taken care of. But also prove to me that I'm worthy how I believe I am and how you keep telling me I am. Like, show it to me. And literally the next morning, I had woken up to my dad had like Zelled me some money or whatever. And it was like literally the next day, the universe responded. And I was like, okay, that was it. That's what I needed to do. Like, like sometimes you have to demand what you know you're worth, even with the universe, because sometimes the universe is testing you, even with the universe. Like, even with the universe, because again, the universe will only reflect what you embody, what you feel you deserve. So, even if don't don't settle even with the universe. Don't settle even with the universe. So, if the universe is not giving you what you know you deserve, and demand it and know that you're worthy of it. Because remember, if you don't have it, it's because, okay, maybe I'm not, is there something I'm worried about? What is it? Like, is it like, and notice the pattern, like you'll start becoming, the more you advance, the more you start noticing patterns in your own life, in your own, spirit will start exposing the things in your life that are no longer serving you. And it's up to you to let those things go and let them go. So, whether that's people, let them go. Trust that if they're meant to be in your life, they will come back. If they're not, you'll know that it was just a lesson that you were meant to learn in your journey. And send them love and protect your energy and send reflectors to send their shadows back, because sometimes when you let people go, they don't like it because they were been benefiting from your energy. Make sure you stay protected. Make sure you just stay present and aware, because that's how you really start seeing the illusions. And spirit will guide you toward that too, as you continue on your journey. Mine started more with like wanting to manifest a specific person. And I feel like that's how spirit gets a lot of us, right? Because we all want to find love, right? But we need to find love within ourselves before we can find love outside, right? Because as above, so below. So once we are completely aligned, we got to be aligned in mind, body, and spirit. So, in order for that to happen, in order for your reality to start reflecting back what you are, you have to have all that aligned. So, that includes like clearing, doing that energetic clearing with chakras and all that stuff, having all of that aligned. That's how the feedback, it's like like your reality is like a feedback of your being. It's a projection. So that all needs to be aligned in order for it to start reflecting it all, you know what I mean? So you'll start seeing bits and pieces of your highest timeline just as confirmation that you're on the right path, that you're in the right direction. And the more you clear, the clearer your connection to source is. And the more you start to notice things in your own simulation, it's really cool. It's really cool. And it's cool to just play around with it. The universe loves to play with you. It almost feels like sometimes, and I almost feel like a child with an imagination and just exploring, and it's really cool. And we're told that we're supposed to take life very seriously, but no, we're here to follow what brings us joy, what makes us happy. And that's why a lot of people are waking up now. A lot of people are being called into their soul purpose because a lot of people have been suppressing their soul purpose. And that's what's bringing this imbalance that's been happening. And now that this great balancing is happening, that's why souls are awakening to the truth, to the illusions. The veil is lifting even more to reveal how fake everything is. And, what I mean by being authentic is not, someone left me a comment, it's like, wearing makeup's not authentic. Okay, I don't mean be natural, be your natural self. No, I'm talking about be authentic. Being authentic is being who you want to be. So that's how you express yourself. I use makeup to express myself. This is how I express myself, and I love to express myself through makeup. And other people love to express themselves through makeup. It doesn't mean I'm not authentic. This makes me authentic because I'm not afraid to express myself in this way. Just like other people, including men, love to wear makeup because that's how they love to express themselves. And that's true authenticity. You know what I mean? Like being natural or not wearing makeup. I mean, I do videos without makeup too, just as much. I don't care. Like, I don't care if people see me with or without makeup. Like, I've posted videos with my hair all over the place. Like, I don't care about that. And if you care about that, that's fine too. It doesn't make you a bad person either. I'm just saying that whether you wear makeup or not, or however you want to dress, like how you want to do it is what makes you authentic. It's when you're trying to follow someone else because it's different if you want is a stop is something if you're finding yourself, right? You're finding yourself, so you're looking for inspiration of who you want to be. Okay, that's totally fine. But if it's because you don't like who you are, and so you're looking to be like someone else because you think that their life is better than yours for whatever reason, or something like that, and that's why you want to dress like them and things like that. Like, that's what makes someone more performative or inauthentic, right? Because they're not really following their true selves, and they're looking for like outside validation rather than going within to see what you like, going within yourself to see what you like and trying those things out, and then saying, well, I think I might like their style, so I'm going to try something like that. Rather, you're looking outside to try to fix or try to feel better from on the inside when you should be working on the inside, so that could reflect outwardly, and that way you can find your true self. Because as you do the work, you shed layers of who you think you were, like, because that's what a lot of this energy, that this old energy is. It's like other people's projections on you, right? Because that's how we become who we are, right? Based on what other people have told us, other people have made us believe, other people have hurt us. And so as you're healing, you're letting go of those things because they're things that don't belong to you. They belong to back to source, transmuted with love, but they don't belong in you, on you in any way, because it's not something. And so, yeah. Uh, Sorry, I get in the zone and I'm like, what was I talking about? But yeah, so I was talking about my spiritual journey. So that's how I ended up getting more into it. And so then I got a job after Salvation Army with the homeless shelter. I ended up working in mental health services. So I worked with people in the community that had mental illness, and we helped them with like medication, with case management, taking them to appointments and stuff like that. If someone was in a mental health crisis, they would call us, things like that. I also volunteered for the crisis team to get some extra money on the side too. So it was like I would volunteer sometimes to answer the crisis calls that we would get that were after hours. If someone was experiencing a mental health crisis, or if someone in the community was seeing someone in the community that was experiencing a mental health crisis and they didn't want to call the police, because some police are not trained in working with people with mental health, or sometimes the police would call us to help us for us to help them when they would get calls like that. So we would help them. And so that sometimes would involve petitioning clients to the hospital to make sure they get mental health treatments and stuff like that. And I really enjoyed that job. That was one of my favorite jobs. I got promoted within the year of being there. I got promoted to leadership, and I ended up leading my own team of people, and I loved it. I had a great team, and even now to this day, I stayed in touch with 3 clients that I worked with, so they're friends of mine now. So, um, yeah, they're Spirit really. I met a lot of great people in that job, so I hope to see them again someday. But yeah, so it was during that job that I started to like developing my spiritual journey, my spiritual gifts. I started developing those more, and I got more into doing rituals. Like again, at the time, I was still more involved in like wanting to manifest a specific person. I was into someone that I thought I was in love with, but I wasn't. I was just trying to fill the void that my husband had left. But I was trying to like manifest him or whatever, but I would use like the moon cycles and stuff like that just to manifest not just him, but like in general. Like I wanted to manifest for myself, like things. I ended up manifesting that salary that I got at that job. I manifested that because, at Salvation Army, they paid me so little. And it was like, I made like 39 or something. And I was like, I want to make 50 at this new job. And I did. I started at 50. Then when I became leader, I got paid more. So that was nice. So I got even better than I had asked for, which was nice. So like at that point, like I was developing that trust with the universe in that aspect, where I was doing affirmations at the time. Well, I'm at a point now where I don't need to do affirmations anymore. At the time, I needed to do them to feel like I was like really anchoring it. Now, I don't really do it. What I do now is different because at the time, I was more like, this is what I thought I wanted, right? Until I grew in my journey and discovered, oh, actually, I have a soul purpose and this is what it is. So now the way that it works is that I receive downloads from spirit. So in meditation, in my plant medicine journeys, I will get visions or I'll get just knowings where through music it's communicated to me or just through visions or images. Like I said, sometimes it doesn't come right away. Sometimes I have to wait days for it to fully integrate and for me to fully grasp what that message was or that vision was about and things like that. But I'll get that message first and I'll sit with it until I have it fully, until it's fully downloaded. It's called a download because it's like that. You know how I said your thoughts are not yours? Excuse me. Your thoughts are not yours. The energy flows through your chakras from the divine, right? And it comes in bits and pieces, because spirit doesn't want to overwhelm you. So it comes in bits and pieces so that you can process it a bit at a time. And as you're processing it, you're in. Because as you're anchoring it, you're understanding it. Your awareness is expanding because it's things that expand your awareness. So whether it's an idea or something, whether it's like a future thing that's going to happen for you. Sometimes it's like I'll get visions of my future, of things that I'm meant to do in the future. Sometimes it's like ideas of books I'm going to write or things I'm going to talk about, things that, topics I'm going to talk about, ways I'm going to explain things. Sometimes it's, oh, this is what I'm creating, this empire I'm creating, which I won't get into it, but it's my empire that I'm creating. So this empire I'm creating and the different categories in that empire, and you get that. And so I got that and I began writing about it. So I started them as journal entries. And you know how I said, like, as you expand your energy, you become more sensitive to energy. And so what I started noticing is as I was writing in the journals, I could feel like my third eye was like, ooh, it was tingling so much, and like my crown, as I write, because it's like I'm anchoring the energy. So I'm bringing it from above to earth. Like that's how you anchor the energy. And then I felt it with my body. I feel it with my body. And I felt it as I was having, when I have the visions and stuff, I feel that too. Especially if it's plant medicine, because with plant medicine, I'm like, I feel it all and it feels awesome. Like sometimes you feel like you're there because that's how vivid it can be sometimes. But anyway, so I write it down and then just let it go. Let it go, and then I just follow, like I follow my intuition. So whenever I feel nudged to act on something, it's not always necessarily about a manifestation, the manifestation per se. Like sometimes it's even like creating, like recording this. Like this is gonna shift something for me. I don't know. I'll let you guys know what it shifts for me. But like every time I create and act on those nudges, it shifts something in my environment as well, like in my field, in my energy. So it's like because the more you do, it's like you're embodying that energy. So it's like I'm working toward aligning toward that highest timeline. So every inspired action aligns you more to that because you're becoming that version of yourself more and more as you continue to act in alignment to who to who you truly are, to who your ideal self. And that's why it shifts things too. It shifts, and the more, especially divine feminines, the more you align actions you take, the more like your masculine follows along as well, energetic wise. So they, like I said, they follow along. But it's your job to not look back to see if he's following along. It's just your job to move forward and do your inner work. They're following along. They have no choice. It's inevitable. It's part of the mission. Stop worrying about them. Move forward. Advance on your own. Something I've been noticing too is like our energies are, they're preparing for union. And I've been experiencing a lot. I've been processing, I've been transmuting a lot of his energy from like his own emotional, um his own like processes that he, like the masculine experiences in their own journey, right? I've been like healing and transmuting that for him or whatever. But at one point I was purging as well. I was purging something in my throat chakra and I had to like run to the bathroom to get that because I was like, and then I understood why the masculine is meant to anchor things in the 3D for the feminine, because we're doing the energy work behind the scenes. And when I was like purging, I was like, I better get treated like a freaking queen because this sucks. We're doing the healing, the energetic healing part, right? And that's why when we come into union, they give you everything you want. Like they give you That's why they're meant to be devoted masculine toward you, because all the work you did behind the scenes. And that's why it's so important to just keep focusing on you. You're doing the work for both of you. And that's why at the end, you're going to be treated like the goddess that you are, because you deserve it. And you don't want a masculine if he's not going to be fully devoted to you. So do the work and you will find a masculine that is fully devoted to you. It might not be the person you think. That can happen, and that's fine. You'll learn along the way that why it wasn't that person to begin with, and that's okay too. That's how we learn. So that's how we live and we learn. But I will guarantee that at the end of that, at the end of all this healing and coming into union with yourself, you will have a masculine that's fully devoted to you, even if you don't even know who it is yet. You just have to keep trusting in yourself. And it gets hard because processing the emotional stuff for the masculine, it's hard to not react to that, And it's been so hard to stay neutral as that comes through for me, where I'm like, I don't care. Staying neutral, and I have to say I don't care to stay neutral, because I'm like, all right, whatever. You still got to prove it to me. Because feeling, that I could see how people get stuck in the loops and the things, because that's how it hooks you. That's how their energy hooks you back, right? Because you start feeling their emotions and the way they're processing the connection. And it makes you want to check in on them and make sure they're doing okay, right? But nope, don't even just witness it and let it go. At least that's how I've been doing it. It almost feels like I feel like spirit's giving me a peek behind the curtain, but I'm not interacting. I'm not involving my energy in it whatsoever. I'm just observing it and letting it go and letting him do his thing, because I'm not here to spend any more energy on him. I'm removing my whole energy out of the way, where I don't even refer to them as them anymore. I refer to them as the divine masculine, like, well, I don't want to give any type of energy to them. But this is all about you. It's all about us, the divine feminines, and our mission. The focus is on us and what our soul came here to do. The masculine will catch up, whichever masculine that is, but it will be someone that will treat you how you deserve to be treated, like the queen and goddess that you are. Yeah, it hasn't happened for me yet, but that doesn't mean I don't trust it. It doesn't mean I don't know that that's what's going to happen for me. I don't need to show proof to know that that's what's going to happen. But anyway, but yeah, that's all I have for now, I think. That's all I'm feeling called to talk about for now. This is just the beginning, and I have a lot to say. If you like this, stay put. There's more coming. So, I love you. Have a great day.